the images. Yeah,
There we go.
there you
Okay.
go.
All right. So let's go ahead and get started here. My name is Tom Martin. I'm here with Retail Dimensions. I'm going to tell you a little bit about who we are in a minute. I'm also going to demo our actual product here in a minute. But before we do that, I want to do just a little quick bit of story time. Uh, so we're going to look at this for a moment through the eyes of an online shopper. And I'm pretty sure most of you at some point or another have bought something online, so this shouldn't take a whole lot of imagination. And, kind of regardless of what you buy or where you bought it, you can thank Amazon for the fact that any customers you have that are come to your website, they're going to have some pretty heavy expectations. When they place that order, they're going to just expect it to magically show up. And the amount of time they're going to expect it to show up is going to be a lot shorter than you retailers probably want it to be. And, I used to be one of you. I know there's a lot of reasons to be maybe just a little resentful of Amazon in your shoes. But in this case, what it really comes down to is some of the expectation benchmarking that's come out of Amazon. They've kind of really cultivated this consumer habituation. And, now the rest of us all, I mean, we just sort of got to try to do our best to live up to it. Just no matter how you shake it, all the people in the world are now used to things being very accessible, very quickly, and very reliable. And if we don't live up to that, you're going to end up with some unhappy folks on the other side of your website. So imagine a scenario where you were that unhappy person. You didn't start out unhappy. In fact, you were very pleased. You went out, you were scouring the web, you found a very awesome, obscure gift for your kiddo on some website you've never heard of, but you found it. You bought it, you got a confirmation email, and then you kind of moved on with your life, assured that it's going to show up at your door in a few days, and you're going to have it, just in time for kiddo's birthday. In this case, that website left you feeling like it really helped you out. But that's not what actually ended up happening. Instead of it showing up in a few days, you got an email from someone at the online store letting you know that they couldn't fulfill the order. They didn't actually have the product in stock. Their website said that they did. They let you order it, but obviously, in reality, they did not. And so how are you kind of feeling at that point? Did that meet your expectations? Of course not. Sure, they refunded your money, but it's been 2 days. Now, even if you could find that item somewhere else, you're not going to have enough time to get it in time. So are you ever going to shop there again? And, the obvious answer is probably not. There's a whole internet full of online stores that, that person just kind of crossed you off the list. As I mentioned, I've been in your shoes, and I've had to be that person at the online store that couldn't fulfill that order. I know how painful it is to write those emails and to have those interactions with those customers when they're upset. And it's just very, very painful to do that because you've undoubtedly lost a customer. And how big your operation is, whether you're a small like one store mom and pop or a 70 store chain, every one of those stings a little bit, and they do add up. And even if you're a giant store, many big, huge chain of stores, that problem's going to be at scale. And so that's actually how I crossed paths with Retail Dimensions. Back in 2007, I've been running e-commerce and IT for a chain of stores in the Los Angeles area. Back at that time, we were on Retail Pro version 8. And thanks to a very much unintegrated cart, we were sending out a lot of those emails to our customers and refunding more money than I really care to share with you in public. Then I found this crew of folks up in Portland that claimed that they were really good at integrating Retail Pro. And it turns out they were right. And it turns out that having inventory quantities updated throughout the day does make a huge difference on how many of those emails you got to write. So by around 2009, I moved my family up to Portland and joined the team. Our mission here is to empower retailers by integrating retail and e-commerce systems and providing the most feature-rich and user-friendly omni-channel integration. We offer affordable, advanced technology to businesses of all sizes all around the globe. And we're enhancing their operational efficiency and data accuracy. But if I really had to just boil it down to one very candid statement, we enable our clients to provide reliable online shopping experiences to their customers. So we've been around for a bit. Retail Dimensions, like as I mentioned, back from 2003. We've been working with Retail Pro since the start. It's the first point of sale that we ever dove into. We are fully knowledgeable of version 8, version 9, and Prism. We have over 2,000 sites we've integrated of all nature. I mean, all walks of life. I always joke that I now know more about ballet slippers and boat anchors than I ever thought I would, just due to the breadth of the types of industries we've worked with. We do work with the 4 most common cart platforms that we hear out there: Shopify, BigCommerce, WooCommerce, and Magento. We do occasionally hear people having interest in some other ones, but these are really the big 4. Pretty standard that people want to fit into one of those buckets. We are a Retail Pro Strategic Alliance partner, and we were a charter member of the Retail Pro Development Partner Program. So very, very tightly knit with Retail Pro themselves. And we offer a wealth of subject matter expertise in Retail Pro, the various carts I mentioned above, and just retail in general. Folks like myself and Kirk Beacon, I mean, we've been out there, we've been in the field, we've been in your shoes. So we can kind of consult on the intersection of all 3 of those areas and how they relate, tie together, give general advice even. So what do we actually do? Said as simple as I can. We're going to send your product data up to your site. We'll create the products, the variants, and use whatever data you have in Retail Pro that you want pushed up to your website. And from that point on, we're going to go ahead and keep those products in sync. Then as the orders come into your site, we'll bring those and the customer data down into your Retail Pro. Now, after all those years I've talked about all those customers, I can tell you for a fact that you all take full advantage of Retail Pro's flexibility. And you should. It's one of its strengths. It's one of the reasons why people buy Retail Pro. You can do a lot to configure it. You can kind of have it meet your needs. You got a lot of aux fields and UDF fields and what have you. You can use them in a lot of different ways. And I guarantee you all do use that a lot. So as a result, we have to talk through a lot of things with you. There, when we engage with somebody, we need to understand how you do business, how you use Retail Pro, and then we configure our software to try to work around how you work. So we start by installing our software on your Retail Pro server, which gives you the ability to tell us which products you want on your website. And we send those and synchronize those up on a regular basis. You don't have to worry about creating the products. We'll do that for you. If you have a lot of products with colors, sizes, the matrix products in a style, you don't have to think about all that. We'll make all those variants. We'll keep track of all those. We'll keep track of the SKUs, the UPCs, the quantities, even some of the, if the sizes have a different price, we keep track of all that too. That's fine. And then when your customers come to the site and they place orders for your products, we're going to bring those orders down into Retail Pro. If that customer already exists in Retail Pro, then we tie this new web order to them. So you'll have that in your customer history. And if you don't, we'll create that customer. And then you'll have whatever you need for your accounting to run reports on, on web orders, whatever, right in Retail Pro. And of course, when those orders become receipt transactions, they're also going to decrement your Retail Pro inventory. So the next time that the sync runs, it's going to have that lower quantity, and then so on and so on. As orders come in and products go up, it's just going to keep going in a cycle as you continue to do business. As far as the value that you get out of our product, we've already talked multiple times about the inventory quantities, avoiding overselling online, avoiding upsetting customers in that way. But there's other things that we do as well that bring some additional value to you. I mean, as I also mentioned, the flexibility. Our product is highly configurable. We have an add-on and module layer. This allows for us to do a lot of customizations in a way that some of our competitors can't. We can basically work with you, talk through what you need, and if we don't support it, there's a good chance we can build it for you. Helping you eliminate double entry, making things more efficient. If you've already entered all the data into Retail Pro, you've taken a lot of time when it's time of doing your purchasing and receiving, and you've already got all this information. Nobody wants to go and type it all again into their cart. We'll use it. We'll pump it up. We'll create the products. Getting consistency with your pricing online. As you're changing prices in your Retail Pro, we can make sure that those prices are getting accurately reflected on your website. You don't want to be selling things online, at a cost that or a price that is not consistent. And you can't have like totally different pricing online than you have in store. We can support that too. And we eliminate a lot of data entry mistakes. One of the things we've heard from a lot of folks when they're not integrated, especially when they're bringing order data down in, customer data down in, it's just a huge amount of points of failure where typos, whatever, can really sting you. Whereas we automate that full data input. Reduces complexity. You can have one integration from us that goes out to multiple websites, can go out to multiple feeds. Even once you get that data out to somewhere like a Shopify, you can even leverage a lot of their channel integrations to places like Amazon, Walmart, or what have you. And in general, just happier customers. We're going to enable you to do things like buy online, pick up in store. They can ship the orders, they can get them, curbside pickup. There's a lot of different ways we can work with you to set up different ways to have customers get the products the way they want them. All right, so I think that's enough tell for the moment. Now I'm going to hop over and show you a demo. So, typical scenario, someone has a Retail Pro, they've got a lot of data in it, they've got a basic Shopify. I'm just going to use, again, I could pick of any of the 4 major carts to demo, but Shopify is probably the easiest. And they want to get that data integrated. Now, I will give you a quick disclaimer as I show you this here today. I'm just going to show you the flow the most common way that our customers use our integration. But again, highly configurable. There's, when we hit the Q&A section at the end, if something didn't look the way you would expect or you would want it to work elsewhere, you can ask questions at that time. I'm happy to let you know whether or not we actually could support what you're thinking. So, again, going back here, we've got a handful of products. I've just got a fairly out-of-the-box prism here with the out-of-the-box products. I added a couple custom products for myself here for the demo, but fairly vanilla. And then again, completely empty Shopify. The way we bridge that gap is with our tool called iSync. And so, iSync literally sits on your Retail Pro server. It's looking directly at the Retail Pro database. We're not copying your data off somewhere else. And this is a key differentiator between us and some of our competitors, is that, we're not adding another hop between your actual point of sale and your cart. We're just direct hit to the data. When you come in here and browse around your point of sale data, it's exactly real time. I mean, it's literally the real data. And so in that bridge, we have the upper section here on the left, which is that view into your Retail Pro. And then this bottom left is the view into your website or websites. As you can see here, I actually have 4 websites configured right now. but we only really care about this one for today, Shopify. So one of the things we can do, and this is optional, is we can do the category management of your actual website down here in our tool. So, like Ecommerce, Magento, Woo, they all have categories. Shopify has the concept of collections. But that whole tree and hierarchy of categories is something that you can set up in here. When we talk to most of our customers, very, very few of them want to set up their website category structure the same way that they have their DCS codes in Retail Pro. When you're thinking DCS codes, those are usually set up with more internal processing in mind, your purchasing, your reporting, versus, how an online customer is going to want to break down and think about your products. It's kind of like the difference between the Dewey Decimal System versus how, Barnes & Noble's going to put books out. And so we do allow for that layer of abstraction where you can come in here and manage a different set of categorization of your products. And you can create new categories all you want in here. I can create one here for books. And you're not limited to the number of layers that you can go. And you can take this thing down as far as you want. But obviously, you're keeping your web customer in mind. You only want to go so many layers deep as per web conventions. But we're not going to hold you back. You can do whatever you want. Now, once we have some categories, the next trick is you've got to tell us what products you want to put in them. A key thing we need is which items from your Retail Pro inventory do you actually want to go up to the site. Very, very few retailers we've talked through over the years want to put their entire catalog online. Most, even just from the standpoint of the amount of effort it takes to find images and descriptions, you really want to make sure you're putting your effort where your return on investment is going to be. And so most people have a subset of products that they want to offer online. And you got to tell us which ones those are. There's a couple different ways we can do that. But one of the ways is to actually browse around through your Prism data. In this case, I am hooked up to a Prism as opposed to a V9 or an old V8. And you want to find those products and you want to assign them to the categories that you've set up. In several ways we can do this, but this is the most common way. We do offer a new products filter. This is just kind of a shortcut for our customers where anything you've recently received, and you can even kind of change the number of days back it looks, it's going to pull those in. So you're just looking at the stuff that is relevant. These are the items that have just been created and added to your Retail Pro. Versus you can browse through the different DCS codes, or you can browse by vendor, via alphabetical order. Now, I'm in a demo, I have a fairly limited amount of products in here, not like you. You probably have a ton of products in your Retail Pro. And so when you hit a category, you might actually need to filter down even further. And so as you see here, you have filters by pretty much all the major Retail Pro fields that you're used to seeing and working with, and filtering by in Retail Pro itself. But one way or another, you'll filter down, you'll find the products that you want to put on your website. And then it's really as simple as just dragging and dropping them down in. So if I want to add this shirt and I want to add this book, I can do that. And if I filter down to a certain category, I can even do typical Windows shortcuts, the shift click, and I can drag and drop a whole bunch of stuff into there. So if you set your filter just right and everything in there is something you want to add to your website, you can kind of do it all in bulk. Now, when I look at these products, we do also enable some additional data on those beyond what you might have in Retail Pro. So double clicking into a product takes me into its details. Now, optionally, you could choose to do your descriptions and your images in our tool. Um, we do offer, 3 additional long description fields. These can be definitely as big as you're going to expect to get on a web page. They can be bigger than any of your customers are actually probably going to read on a single product. And we split them out into 3 because if you do have products where you've got, like, say, a general description versus technical specifications versus something else, and you want those kind of displayed on the front end in a particular way, you can divvy those up. And with images, we support your basic JPEGs, PNGs, GIFs. We don't actually really limit you on the number. Again, keep in mind it's a website, how many are you actually going to go? But you can add these as long as you want and add as many images as you want to those products. Now, I said optionally. You don't have to do these through our tool, especially back in the COVID days. There's a very big pro to doing these directly in your cart, which is you can do that really from anywhere. So, again, our tool installs on your Retail Pro server. So by the nature of that, if you're doing these in our tool, you have to have access to your network, whether that's being in the building or via VPN. But, especially when a lot of folks were working from home over, the last 5 years, we've seen a lot of people trending towards doing a lot of that type of marketing work and merchandising of the online products directly in the Shopify itself or whatever the cart is. Good. We don't take it personal. We want to make things work the way you work. It's configuration changes, checkboxes for us, no big deal. We do allow for some additional availability settings. And so there's a handful of these, but 2 that people tend to really like. One is the sell to threshold. And let's say if I hit sell to threshold and I set this to 2, what we're going to do there is, let's say you have quantity of 10. And when we send this up to the website, it's going to subtract the 2. We're going to tell the website that you had 8. And the reason some customers do this, if they have really hot products that they've received that might be flying off the shelves in store, say like Nike skate shoes, for example, there's going to be a line around the door in the morning. They know those are high risk of selling in store before they actually can fulfill a web order physically. So they'll use the sell to threshold as a safety buffer. And that's something that can be set globally across all your products. And then when you set it here on the product, it would override the global. Or you can leave it blank globally, and then setting it here on the product is the exception. And another one that people will use fairly commonly is the sell always. If you have products that you're never going to run out of, or even if you do, you can replenish them, fast enough that the online customer is not going to feel that weight. You can just go ahead and set that on, and no matter what your inventory quantities are in Retail Pro, we're going to tell the website that you always have quantity there. And then some of the things like the metadata, if you're particularly keen on SEO, again, metadata is something you could choose to manage in the cart itself, or maybe you might even have tools on the cart to help with that. But if you wanted to manage metadata here, you can. And that's another one where you can kind of set global patterns based on fields you might already have in Prism, and then override as needed on individual products for ones you want to get really picky with. Now, the thing about this book is it's fairly simple. This is just one item. It's a style of a single item. That's going to translate to just one basic product up on the website. No variants. Shirt, however, gives us a few more options. Shirt is a style with many items for the colors and sizes. And one thing we can do on the shirt that we can't do on a single item is exclude specific items from that web style. So by default, the way our integration works, a style in Prism is going to go up and be a product on the website. And that's the same across all four of them, whether it's Shopify, BigCommerce, Magento, or WooCommerce. Where I guess in the Magento world, it would be a configurable product if it's a style with multiple symbols. But the main point just being styles product, items within become the variants, the options. So each style would be a thumbnail. You click on your thumbnail, that's where you would see your color options, color and sizes, and that would be these variants of the items within the style in Prism. Now, if for whatever reason we didn't want to push this lavender one up to the website, I actually can come in here and check these boxes and exclude them. And this is very granular. Some people do take advantage of this. It depends on your industry. But we do have a lot of customers where style numbers from their vendors get reused from year to year. And some of them do end up in the situation where the current year's product is mixed in the same style as last year's. And maybe they still have a few quantity on stock, but they're trying to liquidate that stuff. It's probably in their discount section. And they don't want that shown online, even though it might be at a lower price. They don't want it marketed in the same item as the current year's. And so they'll exclude those older ones. And again, that's all depends on how you're set up. Going back to, like I was saying, Retail Pro is incredibly flexible. So we're also trying to be very flexible to accommodate. The other thing that's different on a product that has these multiple colors is you can also add the images by color. And so you're not limited to the number of images, same with the main images. You can come in here and add multiple images for each colorway. You still have your style images in this case. Those would still be, kind of the hero image. By default, if I didn't add a thumbnail, this is going to be made use of as the thumbnail, this main image here in product 1. And these would be the additional images. And then when people click on the different colors and the options, they'd be presented with these alternate color images. Again, there's probably some work on whoever's developing your website to make sure they use those in the standard way. But we'll get that data and images up there for you. All right, so we've kind of created some of our catalog. We've browsed around. We've found some products. We added those products in there. We've poked around with those products in detail. Now we need to actually pump them up to the site. Now, this part here is not something that you would typically have to do. What I'm running here is a manual process out and exchange up. Now, this is the sort of thing that we set this up on a Windows task scheduler. It's going to run in the background. You're not really going to see or know care necessarily what's happening on the day-to-day. But we're going to set it up, to start usually an hour before your store opens, through an hour after you close. And every hour, we're going to pump that data up. Now, I say every hour because that's just sort of where we start you at. Shopify is a pretty known entity to us. What we don't know is, performance of your server, the performance of your internet provider. There's a couple of variables there that may vary, as well as the amount of data that you're cranking out with each one of these. Now, all we're doing when we do this exchange is we're looking at what's changed since the last time. And for most of our customers, that process is under 5 minutes. And so we do have some customers that get this exchange down to literally every 5 minutes, we're swapping with the website. But most people end up somewhere in like every 15 minutes, every half hour. Some just leave it at every hour. The beautiful part is it's just a Windows task scheduler. So if your performance is keeping up and the time it takes is low, that's just a toggle on the frequency of when that task runs. So if I go back here now and take a look at refresh our product page. Now we have products. And if I look at my collections, you can see I've got my collections that I've created. You can see the products are assigned. If I look at the book in particular, I can scroll down. I can see that it's added all the details that we've added. I've pulled in the vendor. I've, pulled in that category we created. We've got our price. We've got our cost. We've got the inventory on hand and available. We also can bring in inventories from as many locations as you have. If you have 15 locations, we can actually bring in those quantities per location, which obviously comes very in handy if you want to have features like letting the customers see how much you have on hand at each store location, or if you're going to do buy online, pick up in store. We'll keep track of all the SKUs and the barcodes for you. I make sure those stay all up to date. And if I go back out and I take another look at that shirt, very similar, a lot of the same stuff, except of course you see now there's more media assets because we pumped up some of those color images. You see the variants on this one. You see the different images per variant. If I go in and click into an actual variant, the same thing. We're gonna keep track of and create all of these for you. We'll make sure the inventory, everything at the variant level is kept in check. Same thing. Price can be different on a particular variant. Sometimes the extra large is another $1 or $2. That's fine. Go back. And on this one, I've even mapped in a meta field from Retail Pro. And if I have a minute, if we have some time, I'll even show you how I did that in a minute. All right, so that's the product side of things. Now, if I refresh my homepage, now I actually have some real products down here on my homepage. Getting products up there is great, but what you're really going to want is to make money. So I'm going to place an order. And I'm going to use my super secure credit card number. And I'm going to check out. All right, so I'm a happy person. Somebody bought something on my store, and now I want to make sure that that all gets reflected into my Prism. This is a decision point. There are options. There is an option where you could bring down immediately as this is placed. This could come down as a sales order into your retail, a pending transaction into your Prism, where you can do your fulfillment process in Retail Pro. Maybe you already have a process around orders and fulfilling them there, and maybe you already have your Retail Pro hooked up to a shipping provider, shipping station, and that might make sense for you. What most of our customers tend to do is bring them in as finalized receipt transactions after they've done all their workflow and fulfilled the order up here in Shopify or whatever the card is. And so one of the main reasons they do it that way, Shopify, you have to admit their online e-commerce is really tailored to e-commerce. This interface for whenever someone calls in, if they want to do an exchange, they accidentally made the wrong purchase, they got the wrong size, changed their mind, it's very forgiving. You're able to go in here and really tweak and modify these orders without having to do things like reversals and stuff like that. And so it's really easy to come in and fulfill the order entirely here in the Shopify side. And then when that order is completely fulfilled, we'll bring that down and pump that into a receipt transaction. And you can see here my web order of 1058 has been brought in. So if I come back to my Prism, I'm just going to do a lookup for today on my name. You can see a bunch of my test ones earlier, but you can also see this one here that was placed 1 minute ago. And so you can see that we've got the subtotal, we brought in the tax, we brought in the shipping, we line up the total, we fulfilled this order. One of the first things we look at, we bring in the customer data. If we find an existing customer record in Prism with that email address, then we're going to go ahead and chalk this up against that same customer. So you'll have that there for your order history. And if we don't find that email address, then we're going to create a customer record in Retail Pro for you. We'll bring in item details. So anything that sort of is relevant to that particular item on each of the items with line items within, including the taxes. Or we have some flexibility in terms of like if we're bringing in discounts, shipping, associates, item notes, we can map to those things if you need them. On the transaction level, we always tend to bring in the online order number, usually into comment 1, but it's something we can map. And then we're going to see any of the fees that were associated. The shipping will get called out, and we'll map that to your existing Retail Pro shipping methods.
Project I was trying to have Debbie work on.
We've got, I think we've got someone unmuted there. We'll bring in an associate. Usually we'll do like a custom one like web. This is something that'll help you whenever you're doing your reporting. You can do filters for your reports based on who brought these orders in. We'll bring in any discounts and again, any taxes mapping to your Retail Pro tax areas. And so that's kind of it. I mean, at that point, this is a receipt. That means inventory was decremented for this item. And it means that it's there if you run reports. So however your accounting folks need to get their numbers, this data is now in Retail Pro and accessible. One last thing, and I'll give you just a quick taste. And I don't want to go too in depth here because it can get a little confusing. But as I mentioned, the strength of our tool really comes from the flexibility and how we can tailor it to you. And so the way we can do that really comes from the way we've built this whole thing up to really be like a giant mapping engine. So when we come in and we work with you, and we would go through all these settings with you and talk through them and help you understand what they do and where they map and help you understand, the pros and cons of doing things different ways. But it's really all about literally being able to come in here and find all these different item and style fields that are available to you in Prism and mapping those to fields in the cart. And so, that even includes if we want to pump things up like this description 4 to a meta field in the case of Shopify, I can do that pretty easily, and so it kind of enables us to enable you to get that data and put it in the website in a way that you can then still leverage it and use it up there. And again, a lot of it, we focus on trying to make things as easy to do as settings as we can, which stores that you leverage, which price levels that you're using for like regular or sale price, even whether or not you're using our images as a button click for us. On the order side, whether you're using receipts or sales orders, where we're going to put that order number, we try to make that all easy. And then even when we look back at the mapping for the orders, as I mentioned, a lot of that comes down to mapping to your tenders, mapping to your tender type, mapping to your taxes, mapping to your currencies, your shipping providers. So that way, when you're running your reports, we're connecting whatever you've got in the cart to the equivalent that you have in Retail Pro to help you, again, all for that reporting to understand, how that data is coming in. All right. So again, quick summary. We can help you with the categorization. We can give you that view into Retail Pro. We need you to tell us what products go up to the website. You have some options you can tweak and extend those products. We'll keep them in sync. and then we're going to bring those orders down, and we're going to get those into your Prism. Now, if I cut back to my slideshow real quick, one last little slide. Again, I mentioned additional functionality. So that, again, was just the very, very plain, kind of basic integration. But we've been doing this for a long time for a lot of people, and we've built a lot of extensions and modules. And so, some of these are actually part of the core product and just something we can enable for you. Some of these are add-ons for an additional price. It kind of depends on what it is you need. But if you look across this, we can do buy online, pickup on store functionalities. Most people that do that want to do some sort of auto transfers because you need to make sure that the quantities get pushed around in your Prism. We can bring in like returns and refunds for you. We've done some gift card loyalty work. Store credits can get synced. We can pump things out to different channels. We do have a price quantity only integration as another option. We do have some folks that their marketing teams might be incredibly particular, and they really don't want the folks in the back office of the point of sale, doing a whole lot with the products. And so as long as we know the right, like if they've got the SKU on the product and that exactly matches the ALU, for example, in Prism, we can make that connection and just update price and quantity, leaving the marketing folks to do whatever they want. We've done some gift registry integrations in the past. There's some caveats there. That's a lot of those are V8, and they're limited on which carts we can actually do that with. I do have the note down at the bottom. Not all of these are supported by all of the cart platforms. But yeah, we've certainly done things. We do multi-currency. We can handle dealing with VAT taxes. We've done some price list mapping. We had some folks that have us kind of auto-generate new and sale categories in their website for them just by looking at the modified dates or whether or not the sale pricing is available. There's a lot of ways in which we can kind of take what we have and extend it to meet your needs. Like again, some of these are already add-ons that we sell at an additional rate. But if you don't see the thing you need, again, that's the place where, unlike a lot of our competition, we're willing to have that conversation. We'll talk through it with you, we'll capture requirements, and we'll see what it would take to build it for you. And because we support those add-ons and modules, we aren't as limited as some of the folks that push up to, a cloud-based platform. And so that's kind of the end of my presentation. I know we have about almost 15 minutes here. I'm open to Q&A.
Hi, this is Amanda. I have a retail store in McCall, Idaho, and we're just starting to think through e-commerce and kind of diving in. A couple of questions about when you were saying after the fulfillment in whatever platform you're using, say Shopify, and the actual transaction goes back into Retail Pro as a receipt. I don't have Prism, so I was trying to imagine, I think we have like version 9 or something. But I was trying to imagine what the receipt's going to look like. Is it just a regular receipt, but it has a designator that shows that it's a web receipt? Like, are all the receipts when I go to print out, like, say, Z out tapes each day, are they separated, or is it all in the total sales for the day between brick and mortar and web?
Great question. There's multiple ways we can approach that with you. And so on top of what I was saying, we can kind of map in that associate, and we will have that comment field in there, but also, depending on how you're configured with Retail Pro, we can also say which store, which workstation, which drawer even, that you want those receipts to come in under. And so that would be kind of another one of those conversations we'd have with you to understand, okay, how are you configured? Where can we put this? and how are you going to need to separate those out in your reporting.
Okay.
Because you're right, if they all go into the same register, they are, there's nothing programmatically that makes them different than any other receipt that goes into that register, other than a couple, flagged fields. And so when you are doing your outs at the end of the night, they would show up in there. But yeah, we're flexible in terms of where we put that for you, and you would just need to decide where you want them.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
some
then,
clients choose to have a separate inventory that they just track web, or they might share it with the warehouse, or they might have a single location or multiple locations. And yeah, but Tom, I also just want to clarify, because you did show it in Prism, that it does work for version 8, 8.7 and 9.4 as well. So anybody listening that's on any of those versions knows that the integration is also available for all 3 versions.
Yeah, 100%. Well, okay, I say 100%. 100% for V9. I will say that V8 is very, very close. The product looks very similar, but there are some subtle differences. I mean, again, it looks almost the same, but some of the features are a little bit more limited for V8 at this point.
Okay, sorry, Amanda, I think you had additional questions.
oh no, that's okay. And then going back to working on the individual items, you were mentioning you can do it either from Shopify or in the iSync program. If you do it through iSync, you have to be logged into Retail Pro. So that would be like we have Log Me In if we want to, like, tunnel into our backroom computer and get some work done. Can you have both options? Like if I have somebody who's going to be doing stuff that I don't necessarily want to be taking over our backroom computer, are you able to do both, through Shopify as well as through ICE, just depending upon where people are or going to do the work?
I would think of it as, well, a couple thoughts there. One system has to be source of truth. And so we can't have people entering into both. We have to pick one that's going to be the source of truth, and it's almost always going to be, Retail Pro. But what we can do, there are options around how we can say that on the initial product creation, take all these fields from Retail Pro, but then don't update them anymore after that. And then you can go up into Shopify and modify all you want and add and change.
Right. Okay.
But what you're not going to see is the changes and stuff made in Shopify aren't going to come back and update your Retail Pro data.
Right.
You probably wouldn't even want that, right? Because you wouldn't want Retail Pro getting mixed up with someone who's doing your website. Now, another benefit you can do is we can set this up. The main instance of our software is going to sit on the server, but we can install workstations on other computers inside your network. So, I mean, if you've got someone who they don't feel like they have to be on the main, I mean, they can be on some other machine somewhere else in the building and still use this software.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
And the main reason to keep Retail Pro as the main is then you keep all of your inventory lives there, all of your reporting lives there. So you're not having 2 separate places where you're having to go, okay, this is all the information on what we sold and what we purchased and all that data in 2 separate places. Now you have it all in one, and in Retail Pro is running all of your reports, all of your purchasing reports, buying reports, sales reports, all of that stuff is just coming from one system.
Yeah, and it's really kind of like the cart becomes a downstream consumer of that data. But if people want to do their images and descriptions there, that's pretty common. There is a lot of folks that choose to do that down there. And what we usually do then is we'll pump it up as a draft when it first gets created, because it won't have any images. You won't want customers seeing it yet. And so we'll flag it as a draft status in the cart. And then any of those that are in draft status that your team has to go through and actually go give it an image, give it a description, and then turn it live.
Okay, that makes sense. And what do you do when if we do this and we start selling in other states with respect to tracking like state taxes? is that something that gets kind of tracked differently? Because we've always only had a brick and mortar store, so we just deal with, our local and state taxes. When we start doing e-commerce and you start taking that data back to Retail Pro, I'm assuming there's something that says you collected California state tax. And does it do that? Does Retail Pro set up for that? Or is that something we're going to have to track just via accounting?
Different folks will do that in different ways. It is a tricky one. And the reason it's tricky is actually most of these carts like Shopify are going to use something like Avalara, where not only are they bringing in the accurate tax for each state, but they're doing it with an accuracy down to each county. And, obviously you're not going to go into Retail Pro and have, every single zip code in the United States of tax rates maintained, right?
Right.
And so what most folks will generally do is, they'll go in and create, whether it's one custom like web tax area, or maybe they'll do one for each state. There's different ways you can go about that. But if you have tax areas set up in the cart here, and then you have maybe it's just by state, and then you've got the equivalent in Retail Pro, we can map as many of those as you want. But then, to your point, it becomes an issue of how detailed does your accounting want you to go? And is it easier to just kind of pull the tax stuff out of the cart? Most people kind of.
Well, and I'm thinking of like running so normally we give all of our dailies to our accountant. Would we then need to run a different Retail Pro report that then shows her where we're selling or gathering taxes from in order to then. I'm just thinking, sorry, I haven't really thought any of this through because we haven't done this before, but I'm just trying to think of like the reporting for her that we do. And if Retail Pro has an option where you can kind of segregate sales tax, but I could just be getting into the weeds, and I'll keep it on my radar if we go forward, just how to separate that out.
No, and it does. I mean, Retail Pro, you would be able to go in and create the different tax areas, and it to some degree it just becomes a matter of how detail oriented do you want to go on that, how deep do you want to dive. But with any of them that you create, we can map them.
Okay.
That's a doable thing. Oh gosh, I had another thought there, but I think it escaped me. But yeah, the main challenge that most folks have, it's just the fact that the online systems using those third parties have. Oh, what I was gonna say is, because they're doing that incredibly accurate one, and your whatever basic ones you might set up in Retail Pro are probably going to be more generalized, probably more at the state level, whereas there might be down at the zip code level, and in some states that's going to be more of an issue than others. But whatever tax was put on the order, regardless of what Retail Pro would calculate it as, we're going to bring it in as it was on the actual web order. And the reason being is, whatever the customer walked away with is an confirmation email from that placing that order. We want to maintain, true to form, whatever was said on that receipt.
Yeah, for sure. Okay.
And so, whatever these numbers came out to on here, and that's why, like, even, the line item subtotal might be, for whatever reason, whether you had an online promo or something, it might be different. And so even those, we're going to maintain those, and it's just going to chalk up in Retail Pro as having been discounted. Because again, we want it to be one-to-one with what the customer saw when they checked out in the cart.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
And if for some reason you can't be unmuted, you can also use the chat feature to share any questions that you might have.
All right. Well, we are at 1 minute. If anyone has any last question, happy to answer. Otherwise, it's been great chatting with you all.
Yeah, and if you think of any additional questions, don't hesitate to reach out. You have both mine and Tom's email address, and then anybody interested in pricing or another call just to kind of go over more specific pertaining to your business uniquely, let us know and we can get that scheduled for you as well.
All right. Thank you all for
Great,
your time
thank
today. I
you.
appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.